Hello again, it's Darren from Dire Outdoors. Once again outside on a drizzly November day. We've had some flurries, or I guess sleet, recently, and that's got me thinking about snowshoeing. And before the season gets started, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of go over what is snowshoeing, what are the things that you need to know about it, so you can make a determination whether or not it's something for you. So first of all, let's go through and talk about what are snowshoes. So here's a snowshoe, and what are they? Like, why do they exist? So what snowshoes do is they go and make your feet larger, and they spread your weight out over a greater distance. So that allows you to walk on snow without sinking in as much. Or they say it gives you float. So that's basically the purpose of snowshoes, is to allow you to walk through snow and not sink as deep, which means you can travel further, farther, faster than you could if you didn't have them on. And also, if you look at the bottom of snowshoes, I don't know if you can see that, here this little cleat that they have, or claw, and then this metal strip along the side, and then these little ridges on the bottom. These all provide great traction. So snowshoes not only allow you to walk on the snow, but they also allow you to walk on ice, to walk down slippery slopes or up slippery slopes without much problem at all. So that's really what a snowshoe is for. The difference in snowshoes are that you size a pair of snowshoes based off of how heavy you are, or more accurately, how much weight you're going to have on the snowshoes. So you could be a really thin person, but if you're carrying a really heavy backpack, it would warrant having a larger snowshoe if you didn't want to sink into the snow as much. So as I mentioned, this is your standard snowshoe, a recreational snowshoe for the average size person, male or female. It has this little binding on it. They pivot so that way as you walk, that claw digs in, and you can kind of do that natural stride, and it feels pretty comfortable as you walk with these. So this is your general recreational snowshoe, great for around here in the Twin Cities area, and most of the people that come with us and use snowshoes, they use these kind, and they just love these. They're simple, they're light, they're durable, great all-around snowshoe. If you're a little younger, I would say like a teenager, young teenager, or an older kid, maybe size 8, ages 8 and up. This is a youth snowshoe. So you can tell, I don't know if you remember the other one, it's a little simpler binding than the other ones to keep the cost down. Still does pivot, still has a traction on the bottom. It is a little bit shorter because typically younger people are a little bit lighter than us adults. And so this is a good for probably age 8 to 14 or so, under 110 pounds. And then if you go even younger, they actually make little kid snowshoes. These ones don't pivot. They're just a hard, rigid piece of plastic. They do have traction. They do have a claw on the bottom of them to help the little ones where it's icy, but they keep it really simple. They're easy to go and strap little kids' boots in and allow them to go out with you. So this is probably age 3, 4, and up to about 8. All depends on if their shoe will continue to fit in here. If it does, they can use these. Once their boots get too big, then you got to move up to the next size. Then for you women out there that have tried snowshoeing before, some women, they go and they get pain in their hips after walking for a while. And that's because snowshoes are wider, and when women wear unisex or men's snowshoes, they have to walk with their feet further away than they normally would, which can cause some pain in their hips. So now a lot of manufacturers are actually coming out with female-specific snowshoes. They're cut a little narrower. I think these ones are about an inch narrower than our unisex snowshoes. They're about an inch thinner. And then the tail on them, this is called the tail, is a little bit thinner too. Some of them even have a cutout. Some brands even have a cutout here that allow it to, they say, match a woman's natural stride better. And so if you're going to be snowshoeing a lot, you might want to look at trying out a pair of women's specific snowshoes. And then the last pair of snowshoes, or last kind of snowshoes that I have, is a mountaineering pair of snowshoes. So if you looked at these standard snowshoes, these recreational ones, see the claw on the front where it goes pretty much straight down. I don't know if you could see that. It comes straight down. And that's great for most terrain around here. These ones, these are a mountaineering snowshoe where you're climbing up hills. And as you can see, the cleat on the front, it does have downward spikes, but it also has these two in the front that point forward. So that's when you're climbing up a hill like this, you can kick that into the snow and hold on to those steeper slopes. So this is a mountaineering one. It's just it's the same concept. It spreads your weight out over a greater distance. These are just lighter and they have more traction. So that is it with the different types of snowshoes. All right, so how do you use snowshoes? Well, let's start out with how do you put them on. So I've got two different snowshoes here. I got that recreational pair we were looking at before, and I've got our mountaineering pair. And the reason why I have the difference, or the two different kinds, is because they both have a different type of binding. So let's start with the recreational one since it's a little simpler. So on a recreational snowshoe, first you put your foot on top of the cleat, or on top of the binding, and your toes should extend past the cleat or the claw an inch or two. You don't want it so far forward that your foot's going to hit the front of the snowshoe, and you don't want it back so far that when it pivots like this, it's not rotating at the ball of your foot. So your ball of your foot should be right over that claw, so it's so your foot works in a natural motion when you're walking. So when you look at this one has three straps. It has the strap over the forefoot, one over the midfoot, and then one on the heel. So I would recommend that you start with this one across the toes. And you want to pull all these straps, you want to pull snug, but you don't want them so tight that they're going to cut the circulation off on your feet. So a lot of people that come out with us will go out for a while, and if you've ever been snowshoeing before, you get really hot because it's a lot of work sometimes, and if you're going up and down hills, you start to sweat a lot. Rarely do I have people that get cold. I do have people complain about cold toes sometimes, and that shouldn't happen if it's not like bitterly cold out while you're moving. So what can cause that is if you clamp this strap on the forefoot down too tight, or even if you clamp this one down too tight, it can start to restrict the blood flow that is going to your toes, and you'll end up with cold feet. So my recommendation is you want to get these snug, but you don't want them so snug that you're gonna run into that cold toe problem. Then the one on the heel just comes up. A lot of boots that are meant for snowshoeing, they have these ones have it under this. I have this gaiter on, which I'll talk about in a minute. They have some ridges here or a little bump here, and those are actually meant for snowshoes where this strap goes above that, and those little ridges go and prevent your heel strap from slipping down as you walk. So your heel strap should be pretty snug, should push your foot forward into the binding, and hopefully as you're walking it doesn't come off. Occasionally it does. Your snowshoe gets caught in something, or this loosens up as you go. Sometimes this may come off and your foot might slip out and you have to put your snowshoe on, but typically if you get it snugged up good and you got this little ridge on the back, it won't be a problem. All right, so if we move on to a mountaineering snowshoe, or this snowshoe, I guess it doesn't have to be a mountaineering snowshoe. This has a different binding. Instead of having straps, individual straps that you do, it has this more of a boot that you put your foot into. And this particular style is you loosen all this up, you slide your foot in, and then you pull one loop and it cinches the whole thing around your foot. The reason why these are great is because they're easy to get on, easy to get off, easy to get on and off. When it's cold out and you got your hands in mittens and your fingers are cold, these are great for that. They're not as durable though, however, and we found that people don't find them as intuitive as just the simple 3-strap sort of binding. So these ones are great if you're going to be taking them on and off a lot, or if you dislike getting your hands cold, should you have to adjust your snowshoes, but they're not as durable. And then they do have the same heel strap as the other one. It's just a little fancier way that it connects, kind of a quick release thing over here on the side. So that's all you need to know about how to put your snowshoes on. Okay, so now that you have your snowshoes on your feet, now what do? Obviously, you got to walk forward and backwards. So not much to say here. Walking forward is, well, you're walking. Like you've heard me say before, if you can walk, you can snowshoe, and that is a true statement. So there are a few little tricks with walking in snowshoes, but they're pretty minor. So one is, if you're walking and you're going up a steep hill and you're finding that you're slipping, even with all of these claws and all this traction on the bottom, if you find yourself slipping, go and kick your toe into the hill, and then that'll help this claw catch even more, and then carry yourself up the hill. Keep kicking your toes in. You should be good. And that's the same with pretty much any type of snowshoe. When you're walking down a steep hill, you'll see on the bottom of this snowshoe, there's these little traction things here along with the claw. You're walking downhill. If it's starting to slide, you want to stomp down with your foot so all of this stuff engages in the snow and helps slow you down so you don't slip. So that's kind of the basics of walking forward, is walk, and then if you come where it's steep, either kick your toe in or stomp down with the whole snowshoe to get better traction. Now walking backwards can be a little trickier, and it all depends on the type of snowshoe that you have. So once again, on this recreational snowshoe, you'll notice that when I lift it up, the tail falls, right? Falls like that. And this has pluses and minuses. So the pluses are, as you walk, this actually will drag along the snow, because normally you're not lifting your foot super high. So this will drag on the snow, so you don't have to lift up the entire weight of the snowshoe with every step. So you'll get less tired as you walk. Another benefit is when you walk in a snowshoe, snow gets on the back of your snowshoes, and since you're just dragging it, it just kind of falls off with every step. So those are the pros. The cons are that when you go to try to walk backwards, this tail sometimes will fall and catch on things. Like if you had a log in front of you and you're trying to walk backwards over it, this might catch on the log and might cause you to stumble. So that's the downside, is that walking backwards can sometimes be a little tricky, and sometimes you have to kind of shuffle around instead of trying to walk backwards. On a snowshoe that has this type of binding, it has, I don't know if you can see this, it has this little rubber band basically underneath your foot. So when I lift the snowshoe up, the tail doesn't drop as much. See how it's kind of staying up? It's not way down like this, like the other one was. So the benefit of these ones is walking backwards and walking over things. It's easier to clear brush, it's easier to clear logs, it's easier to walk backwards, because when you walk up, you don't have to lift your foot super high, and the back of the snowshoe will just kind of follow your natural foot, right? Your foot movement. The downside with these is that as you walk, once again, you'll get snow on the back of your snowshoe on the tail. As you walk, this will tend to flick up like this, and all that snow, especially if it's loose and powdery, will go and flick up on your behind. And sometimes if you're not wearing water resistant or waterproof pants, the back of your legs can get kind of wet from that flicking up on your backside. Another thing is, you are typically lifting the full weight of the snowshoe with every step, so you might get a little more fatigued with this type of snowshoe, even though a lot of times they make them a little bit lighter, so maybe it's a trade-off. But just something to be aware of. So as you're looking for snowshoes, take a look to see if when you lift it up and you have your foot in the binding, does it drop all the way, or does it kind of follow the path of your foot? All right, so another thing, another accessory for snowshoeing is the common trekking pole. Now this is just my summer hiking pole, trekking pole, that in the wintertime I can take this basket off and I put this big one on. So it looks like a ski pole, and it helps with pulling through snow, right? Because it doesn't sink as much. So that's the only difference. A couple things about trekking poles in design is, one, obviously get the lightest ones you can afford, and then two, make sure that however you extend or lengthen or shorten the poles, make sure that the mechanism works with gloves on. So I like these black diamond ones because it's just got a little thumb, if you can see it, this little thumb thing that you can just go and flick, even with gloves on, extend it, and then close it. Some of the twist ones I've had problems with in the snow, so just make sure that if you're going to buy one, you're going to use it for the winter, make sure that whatever mechanism goes and locks this, so to lock it in place at a certain length, make sure that you can do it with your gloves on, because these get really cold in the winter. lot of times this will be icy, and if you got to take your gloves off to mess with it, you won't be happy. Okay, so this is a trekking pole. So then the question is, why would you want to use a trekking pole? So there's a couple reasons. So one, it makes your hiking easier physically. So things that I've read say that it can reduce the amount of effort in hiking with snowshoes or in just general hiking by about 30% if you use a trekking pole. So if you're looking to go further and not get as tired, trekking poles might be for you. It also gives you a better upper body workout because your arms are engaged rather than just kind of hanging at your side or moving minimally like in your normal walking stride. So you will get a better upper body workout if you use trekking poles. And then thirdly, they can give you better balance. So if you don't have great balance, or you're carrying heavy loads or going up and down hills, or you got a backpack on, or you're pulling a sled, trekking poles are great because it gives you that extra stability. The downside of trekking poles are that, one, you have to carry them, so they are weight. They're light, but they're not super light. So that can be a downside. Most of the people that come out with us will offer them trekking poles. We have some people that take us up on that offer, and then I would say 90% of the folks about halfway through the hike give them back because they're tired of having stuff in their hands. So while it seems like it'd be great for everybody and everybody would want to do it, in reality, a lot of people don't like carrying them around all the time. So a good alternative to that is to always bring a backpack with. And then if you are out hiking around, you're using these because they're helping you out, they're great, you need the balance, and then you get tired of them or you're in a flat area and you don't need them anymore, you can just collapse them, put them in your backpack, and then store them there until you need them, take them out, use them again where you need them. So that's the benefits and the cons of a trekking pole.